Hey guys, it's Joe from Eastwood, and in this video, we're going to be taking a closer look at MIG welding. We're going to go over what MIG welding is and what makes it different from flux-core, why you want MIG welds over TIG or stick welds, how to set up your machine, what type of safety gear you need, what common mistakes you might be making, and I'm going to give you all of the tips and tricks that I have along the way. So first things first, let's go over some of the basics. MIG welding stands for metal inert gas. There's also FCAW, which stands for flux-core arc welding, which we'll just refer to as flux-core in this video. MIG and flux-core work almost the exact same, and you can even use the same machine for both welding processes, as they both utilize a wire feed mechanism that feeds the consumable wire electrode into the weld pool. However, MIG uses an external shielding gas, hence the name, metal inert gas, which is dispensed through a nozzle over the weld pool. Flux-core, however, doesn't use an external shielding gas. Instead, it uses a hollow wire which inside contains what's called flux. As that flux burns, it creates a small shielding atmosphere for your weld pool. Our MIG 140 is our mid-range MIG welder. This can do up to 3/16 of an inch, mild and stainless, which is more than enough for most automotive applications. The names of welders correspond to their amperage rating usually. For instance, a MIG 90 will do 90 amps, MIG 250 will do up to 250, and the higher amperage you go, the thicker material you can weld. Now, if you do need to weld aluminum, that is possible with this machine. You could purchase the optional spool gun, hook up some pure argon, switch the polarity in the front, and you'll be able to weld aluminum on your Eastwood MIG machine, which is a pretty cool feature. Now, before we dive into some of the tips and tricks I have for you when it comes to MIG welding, the first thing we always have to cover is our safety gear. Super important for any type of welding. Welding arcs are obviously super hot, unbelievably bright. They give off dangerous fumes, and they also give off infrared and ultraviolet radiation, so safety is very, very important. The first thing you need is a helmet. Now, these are impact rated. They'll keep the sparks off your face and protect your eyes, and of course, they'll allow you to see. I obviously recommend going with an auto darkening helmet. That's just the standard nowadays. Even when they're undarkened, they'll give you 100% IR and UV protection. And these things darken in, not kidding here, 1/10 of a millisecond. So we're literally talking about microseconds after starting an arc. Fascinating stuff. Any welding helmet you get is going to be able to do at least a shade 10. That's as low as I'll ever go. As you turn up the amps, make sure you turn up the shade to compensate. All the helmets that Eastwood sells will go up to at least a shade 12, and most of them will do a shade 13. Now, also on top of that, you're going to need a jacket or an apron, some gloves, some jeans, and closed-toed leather shoes. Also, be sure to unroll any cuffs as well, and make sure you have a nice tight fit. You don't want any loose clothes while you're welding. You'll need some gloves too. Kid skin is very nice. Just keep in mind that TIG gloves and MIG gloves are a little bit different. TIG gloves tend to be a little bit thinner for the added dexterity you need when you're feeding wire, but for MIG welding, you don't do that, so the extra thick gloves are what you want for a little bit of extra protection on your hands. Also, gloves and a jacket will keep you from getting a suntan from radiation exposure, which is also always a good thing to try to avoid. The next thing to consider involves your gas bottle. Now, the pressure in these things is very high, upwards of 2,000 psi. If one of these falls over and the valve breaks, you basically have an air-powered torpedo on your hands, so always make sure the gas bottle is secured to your cart with a safety chain before removing the safety cap. I also recommend a respirator. You don't need anything crazier than a 2097 pancake style filter. Breathing in these gases for a long time is dangerous, and the first time you weld, everything will smell sort of like sweaty nickels for a few hours afterward, so I recommend just wearing one. Lastly, a fire extinguisher is a no-brainer, but always a good thing to have close by. All right, so now we can begin our prep work. The first thing to do is clean our material. Clean material is massively important to the quality of a weld. Rust and mill scale will ruin the quality of your arc. All you have to do is hit your piece with a flat disc, or if you have our Contour SCT, that also works great. For the tighter spots, a Scotch-Brite pad or a little die grinder is perfect to get in there. Follow up with a wipe down of pre-paint prep and make sure you let that dry all the way, and then you're golden. Also, a good ground is especially important for MIG welding. You could ground directly to the part, or you could ground to the table as well. Regardless, rust will hurt that ground, and you don't want that to ruin your weld. You also want to keep your MIG gun clean. You can use a clean wire brush to clean off the nozzle and contact tip, or you can use the Eastwood MIG pliers that you see right over there to knock the debris off of the nozzle, as you don't want that to impede your shielding gas flow. Now, a nice table is always a must as well. You can see I have a great table right here. It's nice and level. There's tons of room here and a bunch of holes in it, which allow me to get clamps through. Weld tables are a great product. If not, you could use the 750-pound work stand with the welding top, and you could get by with something that is a lot more budget-friendly than this. I also recommend having a few of these welding magnets around. The grip magnets, they're fantastic. They could do inside and outside 90s and 45s too. They're a must-have if you ask me. And of course, you want some heavy-duty clamps to hold everything nice and still once you get everything set up and laid out. You don't want your project to shift around in the middle of a weld. Now, the next thing you want to do is a basic setup of your machine. The first thing is to plug it in. Now, as far as that goes, most of today's welders you encounter will run off a 120 or 240 volt outlet, or some can even do both. Our trusty MIG 140 here runs off a regular 120 volt wall outlet, but a more powerful machine like our MIG 180 or 250 will require a 240 volt outlet to get to that max power. Those welders do come with an adapter cord, so they can run at a reduced power off a 120 volt outlet if that's all you have. This is a great feature for the beginner. If you don't have a 240 in the garage yet, you don't need it to get started in MIG welding. We also need to set up our wire spool. I like 030 wire for an all-purpose choice. Get your wire installed by locking in your spool with the wing nut. Hold the wire to prevent it from unraveling off of the spool. Snip off the end, feed it through the drive roller, and lock down the tension knob. Lay the MIG gun flat out and feed the wire through. The Eastwood MIG machines have a quick feed function, or if you don't have that, you could always just pull the trigger and waste a little gas to get your wire through the cable. Now, speaking about gas, you also have to get your bottle dialed in. You can obviously skip this step if you're doing flux-core, but for MIG welding on steel, most people go with a 75% argon, 25% CO2 mixture. This gives you good arc stability and it will reduce spatter. Make sure your gas hose has a snug connection between the welder and the bottle. Crank the gas open and dial in your regulator, usually anywhere from 15 to 20 CFH. If there's not enough gas flow, you'll expose the puddle to the air, and that will create pores or little holes in the joint, which is also known as porosity. On the flip side, you don't want to turn that up too far and waste any gas either. Next up, dial in the settings of your machine. The two big ones are wire feed. That's how fast the wire is coming out of the gun, and voltage, how much energy you're imparting to your material. Voltage too high will make a bead that's too wide, danger of melting through your material, and too low will give you a cold weld. The wire will sort of bubble up on top of the piece and run into itself, which is not good. When the wire speed is too high, there's not enough energy to melt all the material coming out of the gun. It will look a little bit cold as well. Too low, and that'll make a distinct tapping sound. Having this dialed in right means it should sound nice and crispy, if you will, almost like sizzling bacon. Here's a clip of exactly what that should sound like. If you open up your machine, you'll see a graph for different materials and thicknesses. That's usually a pretty good baseline for where to start. Now, let's talk about stick out. This is how far the wire sticks out of the contact tip, not the nozzle. Usually you want to hang out in the 3/8 to ½ an inch range. I recommend the Eastwood MIG pliers for this. If you press those sort of flush up against the nozzle, you'll get right in that perfect stick out range every time. You also want to keep the proper distance from your material as well. Too far away, you'll make it tough for the shielding gas to cover the weld, which will lead to some porosity and just a poor joint overall. Too close up, you won't be able to see what you're doing, and you'll end up sort of laying your head down on the table like that, which makes it even harder to get straight beads. All right, so let's talk about some techniques. There are a ton of different ways that people move their torch. Most people, when they start off, they like to do little crescent moon C shapes, moving slowly along the weld joint from top to bottom with a little arc in it. I started off doing little lowercase e's. That's where you just make back-to-back loop shapes that double back over the weld joint in the shape of a letter E. There's a ton of more advanced patterns out there, but these two, I believe in my experience, are the most common to start out with. It's really personal preference, and I'll leave this one up for debate in the comments section below. But no matter what you pick, controlling your eyes is one of the most important steps for puddle control. Don't watch the wire, don't watch the nozzle, just look at the material, just watch the weld puddle and focus on that, and you will improve rapidly. Also, I like to set up my other hand to use for some extra stability or support. You can't always do this like if you're welding on an inside joint or if you're welding overhead, but when you can, it keeps you nice and stable to sort of rest the gun on your hand like that. Now you can also push or pull the puddle along. I tend to like to pull, but this is basically personal preference, but the results will vary slightly when pushing or pulling. When pushed, MIG welds tend to be a little bit better looking, and when you're pulling, you'll get a little bit of extra weld penetration. But you're going to have to be able to do both depending on what situation you're welding in or what's in your way. Regardless, don't lean the gun over too much. A little lean is good so that you can see what you're doing. I'd recommend 10 to 15 degrees either way, but not any further than that. But again, you will be in situations where you're fighting against gravity or there's something in your way, and that's gonna change your technique drastically. But for the beginner, you're probably gonna be doing a lot of horizontal T-joints, lap joints, or butt joints a lot, and this plus or minus 10 to 15% is a good rule of thumb to start with. Now, before you weld something important, I recommend just doing a dry run. Make sure you have your range of motion set and that you're gonna be comfortable with where your arms are gonna be moving to. Then do a run on some scrap that's a similar thickness to what you're gonna be working with. Make sure you get that right, and then go in for the real thing. Keep in mind, this is a learning process, and as you go, you'll become a stronger welder. Press the button to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're giving away a MIG 180 welder at 500,000 subscribers. Make sure you check out our channel as well. We post tons of great how-to content over there, just like this video. And of course, we'll have all the products you saw in this video linked down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Joe. Make sure you keep it right here at Eastwood to do the job right.